Before we sit down on the floor, I thought you guys might want to see this historic moment. It's January 29th, besties, which means it's time for a new Chinese New Year, which means bye-bye, rooster. I'm free. The rooster has done its service, guys. It's done its service. Hey guys, what's up? It's Belle. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello. And if you've come back, thank you so much. You guys, it's finally time for the very first reading wrap up of 2024, which is kind of insane. I cannot believe how quickly January went. Like, I looked up the other day and I was like, oh, like, I got a film because it's the end of the month, which is kind of insane. So of course today, you guys, we are doing the January reading wrap up. And let me just tell you guys, this month was honestly full of so many exciting new releases, so many anticipated books for me that I just personally wanted to read. And I feel like I had a pretty good month. I mean, it's kind of interesting, but as you guys know, I do like to get into the nitty gritty of it. So today, you guys, we are going to get comfy and cozy. It's going to be a cute sit down video. And I'm going to tell you guys all about the books that I read in January. Alrighty, if you guys are new to my channel, you will not know this, but I do like to throw in a few statistics into the beginning of my monthly reading wrap-ups. It's just, I don't know, I'm a little bit of a nerdy numbers girl and I kind of like it, so we'll quickly run through some numbers. So in terms of some general stats, I read 9 books this month, which is like, that's great. I feel like that's a lot. For me, anything over like 5 or 6, I'm like, that's plenty. You know, I read a total of 4,461 pages, which is crazy. And you'll see as we start to get into the books, I read some absolute chunker books this month. I had an average star rating of 3.94, which is pretty good. That is very, very, very shy of an average 4-star rating per book. And my preferred format this month was Kindle. I have fully succumbed to being a Kindle girly. Like, I know I was a Kindle hater for so long and I was like, I'm never going to use a Kindle. How embarrassing, because literally this thing is like attached to my body. Like, I don't go anywhere without this thing now. I think getting the upgrade has truly just like solidified in my brain that I'm a Kindle girly. You know what I mean? Like, I do not stop using this. It's bad. It's actually not good, okay? I mean, it's great, but I have so many physical, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Following on from that, we have the breakdown of the genres that I read this month. Okay, so as you guys can see there, I read an even split, funnily enough, of romantasy and romance. I actually thought that I had read a little bit more romantasy this month. It's definitely more romantasy than I usually read, but guys, I'm in my romantasy era, okay? Like, it's not a joke. I have arrived, okay? So I read 4 romantasy books, I read 4 romances, and I read 1 dark romance. So sometimes I like honestly can get through like 4 or 5 different genres a month if I'm feeling like I'm in a slump, but this month I sort of felt like I was going back and forth. Like, I was going romance, romantasy, romance, romantasy. Like, it was sort of, you know, the push and the pull. And then in terms of my star ratings is where it kind of gets interesting again. As I was saying, it was quite a high average star rating. So I had 2 5-star reads, which is kind of nuts for the first month of the year. I then had 2 4.75 stars. I had 1 4.5 star. I had 2 4 stars. I had 1 3.5 star, and I had 1 DNF. I don't understand how this happens, but I'll explain to you guys. Every year, the DNF always falls in the same position and you'll laugh about it. So anyways, that's all the statistics done. Let's just get into the first book, shall we? As always, you guys, if you don't know this, I do keep a reading journal. So I will be showing all of these in a little b-roll because I know that you guys like to see them for inspiration as well, but it also helps me just keep track of what I end up reading and when I was reading it. So the very first book that I read this month was actually very kindly sent to me as an early release copy, and I was very, very, very lucky to receive Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. Now, this actually does not come out until the 4th of February, so please mark your calendars. Now, I have been a massive fan of Ali Hazelwood like since the beginning of time, like since the dawn of time, okay? I truly feel like every single one of her books slaps. Like, no joke, they are always so good. But this one here is Ali's sports romance debut. So if you don't know Ali Hazelwood, she is very famously known for doing like these STEM college, you know, sort of romances, mainly just like women in STEM, which is great. Last year she diverted and she actually did her first paranormal romance and I loved it. It was just a complete like refreshing change for her that I absolutely loved, and that's probably my favorite book by Ali Hazelwood that I've read so far. So when I heard that she was changing it up and trying sports romance, I was so excited. So this book follows Scarlett and Lucas. So Scarlett is a diver and Lucas is a swimmer, okay? I now know the difference between the two and you will too when you read this, okay? So this is set in an American college. They're both Olympic athletes. So Lucas is a sort of very famous Olympic swimmer, even though he's still in college. And our FMC Scarlett is, you know, she's sort of wanting to aim for the Olympics as well. However, she suffered a very serious accident in the last year and she has been in recovery and is sort of very afraid of not being able to dive again or to get back on the board, let's just say that. So that's sort of where we open with her. She has a best friend called Penn who is also in her diving squad, and her boyfriend is Lucas, who is the swimmer. They've been together for a really long time, like since high school, and Penn basically confides in Scarlett that she feels like they are not sexually compatible because Lucas is very domineering and he is into some interesting things, and that is just not Penn. So she feels like it's a relationship that it's a hurdle that they can't really get past, and she has a discussion with Scarlett, and Scarlett sort of opens up to her and says, interesting, he's into BDSM. Just letting you guys know right now, this book does have a very heavy focus on BDSM between our two main characters. So basically, after Penn and Lucas split up, she actually like drunkenly one night pushes them together and goes, you know what? You both love BDSM. You guys should hook up. And that's sort of how the book goes from there. I know that sounds like a really odd concept. I personally felt as though a BDSM romantic plotline didn't really mesh with a college, you know, swimmer diver sort of romance. For me, I truly feel like with Spice, it needs to be warranted to the story. I feel like if it doesn't match the characters or the story, that to me, it can feel a little bit out of place. However, I think the hero of this book was actually the romance, because I truly feel like this is probably Ali's most authentically written romance. I felt like it was very believable, if that makes sense. Ali's always really great at writing really fleshed out side characters. The banter is always there. The comedy is always on point. She's just a very naturally funny and comedic writer. So everything else ticked the boxes. I had a great time. I will say that I had a really difficult time rating this book because during the middle we got a bit iffy. We'll say that because we had a really strong start and whatnot. Towards the middle, I sort of lost a little bit of faith, but she did end up picking it back up at the end, and I did like overall truly enjoy this. I ended up giving Deep End a 4-star and a 3 chili spice. As I mentioned, this is probably Ali's spiciest book because of the BDSM elements to it, but I still think it's definitely worth the read. So as I said, make sure you guys pick this up on the 4th of February. Okay, next up we have Set on You, and this is by Amy Lee. This one was definitely on my TBR. I think I chose this like as a prompt for this month because I've had this sitting on my shelf for a really long time. Now this is like sort of like a gym cute romance between a social media influencer and a firefighter. I almost said firefly. Between a social media influencer and a firefighter. Basically the two of them have this like meet-in altercation at a gym that they share. She basically like wants to use this squat rack and she's like, I need a film. It's like her job. And he's like, well, go find something else. And then it becomes this like back and forth sort of teasing, you know, stealing each other's phones and like whatnot at the gym. And yeah, the story goes from there. I'm just going to tell you guys right now that I DNF this about 40% in. Not to say that this book was necessarily bad. The issue that I had with it is that, you know, when you can tell a book is so written at a certain point in time, I really kind of don't enjoy books that I feel are like, unless you're like set in the 80s, in the 60s, like that's fine. Like that to me, I enjoy. But if a book is set, like I could tell this book was so heavily deep rooted in like between 2016 to 2018 because we kept getting references to like To All the Boys I Loved Before and Lara Jean, and like she dressed up as like the Snapchat flower crown for Halloween, and I was like, no, like we gotta stop. I think that was the biggest problem with me, and I don't know what it was. I did not enjoy this. Like I said, I gave up around the 40% mark, just before the 50%. But you guys know this year and last year as well, I've been the same. If I'm not enjoying a book and I'm 100 pages in, I'm DNFing the book, because I think within 100 pages you get a general idea of if you are gelling with the story, and you know, it's like, if I don't really like the book, I don't think I'm going to see myself finishing it or giving it a positive rating particularly. So unfortunately, this one did get the DNF. And in my intro, I was saying to you guys that it's kind of funny. I don't know what it is. Every single year, my DNF falls in the same spot. It is the second book of the year. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like you're coming off the back of a huge year the year before, and then you read the first book and then you like, actually I'm burnt out now. I don't know, but it's funny. Last year, the second book of the year was a DNF, and so was this one, unfortunately. Okay, you guys, because I had a DNF, I do one of two things when I have a DNF. I either go and reread a book that I know I absolutely love, or I completely change genre. And I just felt like I was in need of something new, because I think, and I still feel this right now, I'm really struggling with romance at the moment, which is really sad because I'm primarily a romance reader. I just feel like everything that I am reading is really copy, paste, rinse and repeat. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but I just feel like, I don't know if it's, you know, the quantity of the books that I'm reading. I just feel as though I know how every single romance book is gonna end, and they always end the same way. So I was like, I need something different. And this next book was on the TBR. It's also on my 25 books of 2025. That video is coming, you guys. I promise. I don't know why. I put it in my planner for this month and then I didn't film it. So it's gonna be in February, okay, I promise. But this is another one that I put, that I, you know, prioritized for this year because I'd heard nothing but good things, but I also have not heard very many people talking about this book because I think it's just starting to now get the hype. My feet are falling asleep. I'm gonna be so for real. The next book that I read was Spark of the Everflame. This is by Penn Cole. It is the first book in the Kindred's Curse saga. When I tell you guys, before I even get into this wrap up this month, I need you to write this down. I need you to write this down because if you are a romantasy lover and you haven't read this yet, if you are just a person who loves earth-shattering romance books, you need to read this series. All right, so let me give you the lowdown and try to explain this in the best way possible. I had like full needles and pins. I had to cross my legs. It was just driving me insane. You guys know when you were in like primary school and they made you sit on the floor and cross your legs for like such a long time that your legs would fall asleep, but you had to keep moving even though you had to sit on the floor, you still had needles and pins. That's how I feel right now. That is how I feel right now. So guys, as I was saying, this is Spark of the Everflame. This is book number 1 in the Kindred's Curse saga. So in this world that we're set in, we have descendants and we have mortals, okay? So mortals are just your regular run-of-the-go, you know, humans, and descendants are half god, half human, like beings that are basically like, they're like offspring of the gods. So they do have magic. And basically in this world, the descendants are sort of superior over the mortals because, you know, they feel like they can have magic and they sort of just took over, okay? So how you can tell these two beings apart is mortals have brown eyes and descendants have colored eyes. So this book here follows DM Bellator. She is a mortal and essentially she's a healer. So she's been trained her whole life and her mother is also a healer. So she's been training up her entire life, and how the book sort of opens is one day DM sees her mother getting into a very heated argument with a descended man, and then that night her mother actually doesn't come home, and she doesn't come home for a very long time. So she's presumed missing or worse. And basically DM's mother, because she was such a great and powerful healer, she was actually the healer to the royal family and she was looking after the king who is currently dying. So because her mother cannot be found and there's no one else to sort of look after the king, DM steps up to that role. Through that, obviously spending a lot of time in the castle, she gets acquainted with the very dark, brooding heir to the throne, Prince Luther, and the story goes from there. But one thing I didn't tell you guys is that DM was born with, you know, fiery red hair and brown eyes, except as she sort of got older, her hair and her eyes changed color. That is sort of as much I can tell you about the first book there without giving anything away. This book, you guys, was just so immediately addictive, okay? So like, whilst nothing really like major happened in the first book here, I literally could not stop reading it. I read it in a day. Like, I literally just wanted to know what was going to happen at the end of every single sentence, every chapter, every page. Like, the way Penn Cole writes is so addictive. That's like the best sort of word that I can describe the book with. I ended up giving Spark 4.75 stars and 1 chili spice. After I finished this, like immediately I was in, and I sort of did say to you guys there obviously that honestly is like such an amazing gateway to anybody who wants to start reading romantasy as a romance reader. This is going to be such an amazing place for you to start because the next book I'm about to hold up, just wait. After I finished Spark, I did not want to do anything else because it ended on the most incredible cliffhanger that I was like, I need book 2 right now. So I went to the store and I went and bought Glow of the Everflame, which is book 2 in this saga. Now, I obviously cannot tell you guys anything about what is happening in this book because, you know, it will spoil what sort of how the first one ended off. All I can tell you guys is that this is now in my top 5 favorite books of all time. This book in particular, okay? Now let me explain why. To any of the girlies out there who have read, you know, ACOTAR, but in particular, like A Court of Mist and Fury, that's sort of infamously known as being the romantasy book, right? And a lot of people will always say, like, I wish I could wipe my memory to read that book again for the very first time because of the way it made you feel. And I have been chasing that feeling and trying to find another romantasy that will give me that feeling that I got from reading A Court of Mist and Fury beginning of last year, right? So over the whole of last year, I just read so much romantasy. I read a lot of popular romantasy, and there were some amazing books there, like, don't get me wrong, but nothing ever gave me the feeling of like that perfect, all-consuming, earth-shattering romance that I got in like A Court of Mist and Fury. When I tell you guys, this book exceeded A Court of Mist and Fury tenfold. And when I say that this is the best romantasy book and it's going to be the best new romantasy series ever, I'm not kidding. After I finished this book here, I went and had a look at a few other people talking about this book and this series. Everybody who has read this book says the exact same thing as me, that it is literally the best romantasy book that they have ever read. I don't know what she put in this one here, but the romance, the slow burn of it in this one here is next level. Like, I cried so hard. I didn't want to do anything all day whilst I was reading this book. I took it with me, like, to go and have fish and chips down at the park. Like, I got on my Kindle after I bought the physical. That's when I started converting over to the Kindle, okay? I didn't want to do anything. Like, when I think about some of the stuff that I highlighted in this book, oh my Lord, like, this is a love story. Like, I am obsessed. I've literally no words. This one is like a 5-star, infinity star book for me. And this is a book that honestly shows you do not need to use spice. You don't need to use spice at all for your book to be a Roman Empire book, right? The first book and the one after this I'm going to talk to you guys about in the same series, there is spice, but this is the best book. This is the best book in that series so far. Not an inch of spice. Just the best romance, just the best fantasy plot. Like, it is so good. Please read this book. I'm not playing around anymore. And just sort of rounding out this series so far, because the 4th book is not published yet, I read, dare I say, the biggest book that I've ever read in my life. And of course I read it on Kindle because it's not been traditionally published yet in Australia. And I read Heat of the Everflame, okay? So this is book 3 in this saga. As I said, there's going to be a 4th, and I don't know how else to sort of describe this book other than it was the biggest emotional roller coaster that I've ever been on. Now, when I saw that this book was over 1,000 pages, my shoulders like cinched in because I was like, oh wow, like this is a big book. I think prior to this, the biggest romance book I'd read was maybe A Court of Silver Flames or like When the Moon Hatched or something like that. I can't 100% remember, but this was a big book, okay? And when I tell you guys, I'm usually the first person to call out if a book is too long. Like, I will explain to you and be like, this is where we could have cut stuff out. This book was 100% worth every single page. Like, I just had the best time. And like, there's a quote in this that literally makes me want to like I'm done. Like, I need that in my life. Like, that is what I need from a man. Like, where can I find these men? You know, like that's the standard that I need. I just cried, especially at one part in this book. Like, it is otherworldly. And like the female main character, I've seen a lot of people sort of have like a mixed opinions on her, but I relate to her so deeply. I feel like she is flawed because you have to be flawed as a female main character in a romance series. If she wasn't flawed, we would not have a series to tell. We wouldn't have a story to tell. And I just absolutely adore her. All the side characters are amazing. And this one ended on the biggest cliffhanger, right? And the fact that I know, Pen Cole, if you're watching this, I know that Burn of the Everflame was supposed to come out last year and that it's written, and I know there's some things going on, but you know, the fact that it's sitting there and I know that it's written, it's done, it was supposed to be published last year. I need it. Like, I need to know. This is my question to you, Pen Cole, bestie Pen Cole. Can you just like slip the release date under the door? I won't tell a soul, but I just need it for peace of mind for Burn of the Everflame. Okay, like, I need it. I need it now. All I can say, you guys, this series so far, I'm gonna make it my agenda to make every single person read this series this year, because I am literally like, I can't even talk about it. I'm gonna be sick. I'm gonna be sick. Alrighty, next up we read another very exciting anticipated release from me, at least this month, and I read Phantom by H.D. Carlton. Now, if you guys are aware and you're familiar with H.D.'s work, this is actually a prequel novel to the Cat and Mouse duet, so Haunting and Hunting Adeline. In particular, this one definitely aligns with Haunting Adeline, with the story in the first half of the duet. So in Haunting Adeline, there is a plot line where Adeline, moves in to this house that she inherited from her great-grandmother Gigi, and when she's like moving into the house, she finds a hole in the wall, and inside that hole there is a diary. That diary belonged to Gigi, and Adeline sort of realizes that as she's reading her great-grandmother's journal that her great-grandmother had a stalker, and it's a stalker that she fell in love with. Phantom is that story, and I'm sure many people were so excited to see how it all came to be and how it started, because obviously throughout Haunting Adeline we get quite a few journal entries, right? But seeing it firsthand, seeing them fall in love was so special, and I have to laugh. Guys, I also just have to tell you guys, if you guys didn't see my last video, which was tier ranking on my 5-star reads, I let you guys know that over January I was filming a ginormous reading vlog of all new releases, right? So I had Deep End on there, I had Phantom, I had Onyx Storm, I had all of this footage, and my computer died, okay, and I didn't have a backup, and I'm so devastated. However, I took it to Apple, and basically they said that the memory and like the hard drive is fine. It's actually an issue with like the touch bar on my laptop, so I have to go and get the data extracted. So I just want you guys to know that I do have like reaction footage to all of the new releases from this month, and that's why I'm Devo, because I had the best time live reacting to Phantom as well, because I just enjoyed it. I think in one of the clips, like I was literally losing my mind, because when I first read like Haunting Adeline and I like found out it was a stalker romance, I was like, this is so weird. But now reading it again, I'm so desensitized to stalking. I'm like, oh, this is so cute. It just made me laugh so hard. Every single book that HD writes, I love, and I never have a problem with, and I just have the absolute best time. Like even Ronaldo, like I want to squeeze his little cheekies. I loved it. I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. It was so solid. So solid. And there was a little surprise at the end for Zayd and Addie fans, which I really loved as well. So yeah, it was spicy. Like HG, she just knows how to bring the spice, you know what I mean? All right, now the one that I know you guys are excited to hear me talk about. Now, before I open my mouth about this book at all, I just want you guys to know that this is going to be completely spoiler free. I absolutely promise I will not spoil this book, and I've been very vocal online, especially on my other social media platforms this month, about people spoiling this book way too soon and way too early. It is so frustrating, and I'll get into it in a little bit, but I just want you guys to know you are safe. I can't even show you my journal page because I'm in love with it, but there is one photo I put on there that accidentally spoiled the book, so I can't show you my journal spread for this one, unfortunately. Maybe I can, but I'll put my hand over it, we'll decide. But anyway, the next book that I read, of course, was Onyx Storm. This is by Rebecca Yarros. I dare say this is the biggest release of 2025. Like, it is a book that the world was waiting for. If you guys saw my Bookish January vlog, I actually went to a midnight release party for this book, and it was just so much fun. I absolutely adore the Imperium series. Fourth Wing was actually the book that got me into romantasy 2 years ago now, and it is just such a solid series. I am deeply obsessed. Now, obviously, again, I cannot tell you guys the plot of this one because this is book number 3, but I know so many of you have been anxiously waiting for my thoughts, and I have not said a single peep of anything because at least now it's just over a week or so since the book has come out. I think I can start slowly giving my thoughts. I think that's fair. So, given the sort of cliffhanger that Iron Flame ended off on, I should say, I think everybody knew that the stakes for this book were going to be really high. And I loved it. Like, I can't even go into the details, and just rest assured, I did actually vlog my entire journey reading this book. I still have that footage because I had it on my SD card when the computer sort of chonked. So if I'm unable to extract the rest of the reading footage data, I will still post it at some point because I have some amazing raw footage of me reading and reacting to this book, spoiler free, of course. So I will try to put that in another reading vlog. But I think coming back to this after reading Iron Flame, it would have been in November last year, I was just like immediately reminded why I love this series so much, why I love the characters and the world, because it is just amazing. And I truly feel as though Rebecca Yarros is, for lack of a better term, she's a genius. Like, I think that these books are so good. Now, I don't know if that makes me a bit naive because I haven't read too many romanticies or whatever, but there is just something in these books. It's like crack. Like, I'm being so genuine. Now, what I'll say about this book is I felt as though it was a little bit slow in the middle. Now, this one sort of fell in the trap for me a little bit with Iron Flame, where I feel like we could have cut quite a few pages out of it. I feel as though we were getting a little bit repetitive with what we were doing. I'm not going to say what the characters were going on, what journey they were going on this time around, but I felt as though the sort of journey that we were on, or like the, what's the word that I'm looking for here? The quest that we were on, let's say that, we got a bit repetitive, and I sort of was like, okay, we need to change it up a tiny bit in the middle here. But when I tell you guys, the last 100 pages of this book, Rebecca Yarros is so talented in the way that she just creates absolute chaos, which is, you know, pretty common for a romantasy book to sort of that happen in the last 100 pages. But she creates this chaos where you actually have no idea what's going on, because she writes cryptically, and she does it on purpose so that you can't put two and two together. So she creates this chaos, she writes in multiple point of views and just carries on and carries on. And then suddenly we're in the last chapter. There's a huge cliffhanger that you don't see coming because you are still trying to piece together whatever you just read 2 pages before, and that is exactly what happened in this. I cried so hard at the end of this book when I explained to you guys that the next book in this series is going to be out of this world. Like, I feel like it is going to put me in an early grave. Like, that is how I feel. I cried at the end of each of these books so far. I'm trying to think about which one I cried at the hardest, because this is the ending that I think about the most. This is the one that's still a week or almost 2 weeks later, I still think about the ending of this, and I don't think I will forget it for a long time. I've been listening to music after this, like playlists and everything, and I just get so emotional. I love the characters, but even more so the dragons. Like, obviously because they talk, they just feel so realistic and human that I feel so attached to them and connected to them. And Zayden Ryerson, this man gets hotter with every book. Like, this man, I cannot speak. I can't speak English, because you know what? It's sick and twisted that men do not exist like this in real life, okay? So, Onyx Storm got a 4.75 star rating from me and a 3.5 chili spice. This is definitely the spiciest book in the series, and it does not disappoint. The 4.75 to me was, as I said, there were definitely imperfections in this book. For me to give a book 5 stars, I truly have to feel as a whole that I am engaged the entire time, that I don't feel like there are things that could have been chopped or whatnot. And that, for me, in all fairness and honesty, I feel like there were things in here that we could have gone without, and there are certain changes I would have made to the structure of the plot. When I finished this book, I was prepared to give it 5 stars, but I thought about it. I honestly, for days, I danced between a 4.5 star, a 4.75, a 5 star. I didn't know, but I'm happy with the 4.75 now, because the feeling that I still continue to get days and weeks after reading this, it solidifies, guys. It's a hit, and I need the next one. It's not funny. Next up is a really exciting book, because I was very kindly sent another early copy of this book, and I read The Other Brother. This is by Tierney Page. Now, if you guys are over on, you know, Instagram and TikTok, you may very well know my girl Tierney. Now, she is honestly just the funniest person on the internet. Like, that's how I say every time I like talk about her. She's obviously been in the, you know, the bookish community for a very, very, very long time, and earlier this year she announced that she had written a book, and the book is, of course, The Other Brother. And bestie girl sent me an email one day, and she said, "Girly, would you like an early copy of my book?" And I said, oh my God, please. I was so excited to read this book. I'm honestly, like, I say this all the time, I'm so in awe of people who are able to write books. Like, I just don't truly, like, without any joking around, like, I just don't feel like I could. I don't know. I feel like it's not in my wheelhouse. I love reading them, but I feel like I'm truly, like, in awe of anybody who writes their own book. So she sent it to me, and I was like, I'd absolutely love to read it, and I was very excited to get into it. So this book follows April. We open on her engagement party, and she's currently engaged to a man called Lucas, and basically they sort of at their engagement party, and they get interrupted by Lucas's brother James. But, you know, throughout the party, Lucas is always like checking his phone, and April's just a bit like, this is a bit sus. So of course the following day, April finds out that Lucas is cheating on her. April goes through this process where she is mourning that relationship, and she ends up actually forming a good friendship with her ex's brother, James, who, as I said to you, sort of walked in on them in the closet that night. There's always been this tension and a spark between April and James, but obviously, you know, no one really went through it. They weren't really that close, to be honest. But, you know, through this time of healing and pain and whatnot, James and April have gotten considerably close, and that's sort of all I'm going to tell you, because this is a forbidden ex-fiance's brother rock star romance, and it is really, really, really cool, you guys. I just had the best time reading this. As I said, so in awe of Tierney to like be able to write her own book. I just think it is so good, and for a debut, it was super strong. It's really funny, and I was even posting on my like social media as I was reading the book, because some of the one-liners that she put in this book was so funny. Like, there's a time where like the girls went on this retreat and James stayed at her house to like look after her cat, and she came back and he'd cleaned the house, and he's like, oh yeah, like I just did a bit of a cleanup and like did the bathrooms and whatever. In her internal monologue, she's like, oh my gosh, I hope there weren't any skid marks. Like, she perfectly like encapsulates her dry Aussie humor in the book, and it's just it's really clever what she's done. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. I ended up giving it a 4-star and a 4 chilies, because the girl, like, she knows. I feel like Tierney is a spicy romance connoisseur, or just a spice connoisseur, and she did such, like, she's amazing. And there's very much to say, you know, there's no lack of spice and jaw-dropping spice either. Okay, and the final book that I read in January was What Are the Odds? And this is by Maddie Lee. Now, I think I briefly mentioned this in my January TBR video, but essentially I sort of set myself a little challenge this year and a fun little reading vlog idea to read 12 recommendations by 12 of my like bookish content creator besties. So I basically, you know, I reached out to 12 of my really close friends who also create, you know, bookish content, and I asked them each for like a book recommendation or one of their favorite 5-star reads. And basically I like allocated one of them to each month of the year. So in January, I ended up choosing Gia's. So this one had such a cute and interesting concept. So this book follows Grace. She is Australian, and she's actually gone over to the States to do like an exchange program through her university. She is a swimmer. Anyway, she's just started over there, and she ends up getting like paired up in one of her classes with the captain of the hockey team and the captain of the football team. So we have Levi and we have Riker, and basically they're sort of sat at the table together, and that ends up being like a group for an assignment. We then learn that Levi and Riker have a rivalry, because the ice hockey team and the football team have always had some sort of rivalry at this college, right? So the two captains have beef with each other. They do not like each other. And at the beginning of the book, we do sort of get the two of them striking a deal with each other to sort of see who can get Grace to fall from them first. Whoever wins gets their team privileges to use the gym for the entire year. So it's sort of this really bad like sort of bet between the two guys. However, our male main character, of course, is Levi, who is the ice hockey captain. You know, as he sort of tries to win Grace over, he obviously ends up developing real feelings for her, and the book goes from there. I will say, you guys, I absolutely adored the first half of this book. Like, I could not put it down. It was so stinking cute. There was even like, they did Halloween, and she's blonde, right? And I thought we have to do some sort of Grease like parallel, because she's from Australia, she's blonde and whatever. He ends up like buying her a Sandy costume. Levi dresses as Danny, and then they're all the T-Birds, and it was just so cute. Like, I was having a really good time for the first half of it. I will say in the back end, I think we dropped off a lot. I think that it just got a little bit boring, and I just felt like I knew where it was going. I also felt like, you know, there were some grammatical errors and things that could have been fixed on the editing floor, but that's just being nitpicky. The resolution didn't match where the first half of the book was going in terms of like pacing and things like that. So I ended up giving this one a 3.5 star and a 3 chilies. There was definitely a lot of spice in this. So if you love a spicy book and you love just a silly, giddy, cute, like, you know, college sports romance, you'll love this. It was really a lot of fun. So that's all the books I read. Alrighty, you guys, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for sticking through all the way to the end. If you did, I really appreciate it. What was your favorite book that you guys read this month? I think you guys know. Well, I've sort of got to hold two up, because I think that my favorite book that I read this month was definitely Glow of the Everflame. But Onyx Storm is a very close second. Even though I didn't give it the 5 star, I cannot stop thinking about this book. I know there's another obviously book in here that I gave 5 stars, but I just can't stop thinking about this. Doesn't mean it's a 5 star, but these are probably my top contenders. This one's definitely my favorite. But yeah, let me know what your favorite was of the month. As always, guys, if you aren't already, you are more than welcome to follow me on TikTok and on Instagram. I'll leave my handles on the screen and in the description box. And if you'd like to, you can like this video and subscribe to my channel. And make sure you are hitting the notification bell. That way you get notified each time a brand new video goes up. Thank you guys so much for stopping by again. I really appreciate it. The next video, of course, is going to be the February TBR, which you guys actually got to pick. So make sure you guys keep an eye out for that. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a lovely day or a lovely night, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.